4 years after the Flint water crisis, residents are still terrified. There's not a lot of trust. There's been some improvements, and this is according to Jessica Glenza, who's in Flint, Michigan, for TheGuardian.com. The link is in the show notes below. And she basically, in this story, follows this woman, Leanne Walters, and it talks about a lot of things that have happened in the last 4 years. There's been a Netflix series called Flint Town. Walters has now won the Goldman Environmental Prize for Activism, which comes with a $175,000 unrestricted prize. And the state of the water is improving. But what this article goes into is there's been profound psychological effects just of this family and people who are afraid to drink tap water. They just don't want water at a restaurant. They're bathing with bottled water. It's still unbelievable. And they've wanted the federal government to expand Medicare so that everyone in Flint should be getting free health care is what these activists are fighting for. That's obvious, but it hasn't happened. And what they say is what the water crisis did, the main issue with Flint is the de-investment of Flint. And the water crisis just sort of heightened this, but it also showed they've been pumping awful stuff into the Flint River for decades. And that's why, that's what helped create this problem. And then de-investment, and then it all sort of came together with, but it's been 4 years, and there's been improvements. But as I reported, and we've talked about, the United States just spent $120 million shooting rockets at Syria. $120 million that could have gone to Flint. But we don't want to do that. And currently, 41.9% of Flint residents live in poverty. Flint residents activists said healthcare is the top of their list of 3 demands. On April 25th, when 4 years ago officials switched Flint water supply, they planned a rally in Lansing, the state capital. So that's already happened. And the town's divided. People have been put on opposite sides of lawsuits. And she said, if this were any other town, this would not have happened. They would have insurance, she added. This other woman, has Medicare, the government-run healthcare program for elderly and disabled Americans, but even that requires her to pay about 20% of the costs. Richest country in the history of the world. People bathing with bottled water and still paying 20% of the healthcare costs. If all of Flint residents receive fully funded health insurance through an act of Congress, for example, the best recent example would be the James Zadraga Act, which established health benefits for people who responded to, worked, or lived near Ground Zero on 9/11. Health officials in Flint have begun the Flint Registry to connect affected families to health services. New York City's 9/11 Health Registry is the largest in the United States history to track the health effects of a disaster. For Leanne Walters and many like her, the routines since sky-high lead levels were found in Flint's water remains the same. Drive to the local supermarket to get water. Refill plastic gallon jugs with water not from Flint. The tap is next to the boxes of water pitchers which filter lead. They do this several times a week. This country can do better than this. Cut the military budget in half. Reinvested in infrastructure. Bring our military home to help rebuild places like Flint. Build pipelines for water, not for oil. Put the country to use, making green energy. Upgrade and update the electrical grid. High-speed rail. Free college tuition. Medicare for all. Workers' rights, workers' benefits. This country could be the best country on the planet. But instead, it's like one of the worst. I want to see it fixed. And I know you do too. That's why you're watching this show. So many of you are already involved. If you're not, get involved. Get involved on a local level. Spread the word. Because there's things out there now called news deserts, because local newspapers have been bought up and taken out, and that's the thing. You got to follow the local news, because local newspapers were the ones that held local politicians in check. So I can cover as much as I can, but I'm just one guy. So dig deep in the stories in your town, in your county, and in your state. And hold those local politicians accountable, because local politicians let this fucking Flint thing happen. And you got to hold them accountable. Thanks for watching.